Okay, so once you've signed up via the website with your email address, this would be the screen that you're welcomed with. I'm just going to walk you through the basic setup process and a little bit about the layout of the software. First question then, am I completing a personal tax return or a partnership return? You have both options here. I'm going with the SA100, the personal tax return, and then you can see all the different types of income or the different pages of the tax return that you might need to complete for various different reasons. Today, with this example, I'm just going to go with a couple of common income types. So we'll go with self-employment, and I'm going to select property. So this will then set up the tax return so that I can enter those types of income. Obviously, you can work through these and choose any that are relevant for you. And I'm going to click continue. And now you can see that my tax return has actually been generated here. So on the left hand side, we've got the self-employment tab. And then if I click on tab below UK property, you can see that it's going to be the same layout for each type of income. And generally, that's how this will work. Whichever tab you're on, whichever type of income, the layout will usually look the same. You'll have a green income section, and then in orange, you'll have an expenses section. There are a couple of pages of the tax return that are slightly different, but we'll have a look at one of those in a little bit. You can see that I'm in the 2024-2025 tax year. And once you're actually set up and using GoSimpleTax, rolling forward to a new tax year is really easy. Once you're ready, you can just update from here, and you'll be given the option of starting a blank return or just rolling forward your settings from the prior year. So if you happen to have self-employment and UK property income every year, you can just roll forward and your return will automatically be set up, ready to go. Now, the first thing I want to do here before I provide any of the numbers, I want to enter my personal details. Now, before we get going, I will just point out that in the bottom left-hand corner, you've got a question mark. If you click on this one, that will take you through to the support team. The support team includes ex-HMRC support staff. So anything you need, jump in here, submit a ticket, or if they're online, ask a question, and the team will help you with any issues that you might have. What I like to do when I'm completing my tax return, before I actually enter any of the numbers, any of my income or expenditure, I like to fill in all my basic details. So the first step here would be to hit the personal details button and then work through and enter all of the details highlighted in here. So these are all basic details that relate to you as a taxpayer. Your address, your unique taxpayer reference, anything highlighted in here. If you work through and then save those details, and then you can move back on to your tax return. The next step in my example would be to provide details of your self-employment. So again, I like to go with the narrative before I go with the numbers, and typically each page of the tax return will have a little bit of narrative or some questions that you'll need to answer. So in this case, to answer the questions on my self-employment, if I head to the edit button, and then we'll see the tailoring questions, but this time these are questions relating specifically to your self-employment. So we've got business name, we've got address for your business, have your details changed in the last 12 months. You work through and answer all of these questions and then save those details. We're now at the point where we can actually enter some of the numbers behind the self-employment. So to enter income, what I'm going to do is click on the plus income sign just to the right hand side here. And then from the drop down, we're just looking for the most relevant category. So from here, don't overthink this too much, but for me, the most relevant would be sales. And again, I'm going to go with the minimal amount of information. So let's say I had 50,000 of sales. I could provide a date if I wanted. I could provide a description. I could attach receipts and invoices and supporting documentation. In this example, I'm just going with the single figure of 50,000. I'll save that. And then what you'll see is we have a live tax calculation in the top left here. So just based on that £50,000 of income, the software is applying my personal allowance and then calculating tax at the appropriate rate. So based on that alone, I have a tax liability of £9,731.80. And then what should happen as I add additional income or expenditure, that will update in real time to give me an idea of the tax liability that I'm expecting. The next step would be to add some expenditure. So again, same setup. If I click add group, but this time on the expenses line, and again I'm going to look for the most appropriate category, so I'll go with travel expenditure. Save that, and you can see below the orange line I then have a section for my car, van and travel expenses. I'll add the detail, looking for the most appropriate option. So if I go with fuel in this case, and I'm just going to provide an amount of £2,000. Again, you have the option to apply private use. You can provide a date, you can attach receipts and invoices, or you can go with the absolute basics. And you can see my tax liability is updated. My self-employed profit will now sit at 48,000. So as expected, I'll pay less tax on that, and that's why my liability has reduced. I can then switch across to the UK property tab, and I would just go through the same process. So first of all, I want to add any narrative and answer any questions about my UK property income. So I'll click on edit. I'll work through here. I can provide the address of the property, the number of properties that I'm renting out, the type of property income, and just work through these questions one by one. Once I'm happy, I can then head back to the main page and provide details of my income. Now, it might be that I don't have any expenditure on my property income, so I could, again, look for the most suitable income, rental income received, and it might be that I've just received 10,000 of income with no expenditure to go alongside that. So I'll save that, and again in real time my tax liability has now updated to £12,757. Now, even though I showed you how to set up your tax return with the self-employment pages and UK property in this example, you can still amend the return from in here. So if I wanted to get rid of my property income, if I want to delete this page and remove it, I can do that by clicking delete at the top. OK, my tax liability is updating in the background, and we should just be left with the self-employed pages. I can also add additional pages by clicking new page. And again, from here you can see all the different types of income and the different pages of the tax return that you might want to add. One that I will mention is the SA 109 at the bottom here. These are the residency pages. I'm going to select that one and add that to my tax return. The reason that I wanted to add this page is for two reasons. First of all, because it looks slightly different. You don't have the income and expenditure sides. So this is one of those examples where the format can appear slightly altered. But the other reason is because residency pages are not something that you can submit through HMRC's online software. You have to submit residency pages through third-party software like GoSimpleTax. So if you do have residency information that you need to provide and you need to submit an SA 109, then GoSimpleTax is the right place to do that. And if I wanted to complete the residency pages, then in this case it would just be clicking on edit and then working through. In here you can see there are quite a lot of questions and quite a lot of information. There are 5 tabs that you would have to work through here and answer any relevant questions. And if I'm now getting to the point where I'm happy with my tax return and I want to go ahead and submit it, then the first thing you'll notice is that I'm actually on the freemium account at the moment. I haven't paid to upgrade my account, so I would have to click pay now. I would have to populate all my information in here, including my UTR number, so that the software can make that link to HMRC and make a submission on your behalf. And I would just need to make sure I'm on a paid for account before I can actually make that submission to HMRC, and to ensure that I've unlocked all of the features that GoSimpleTax has available. Now, I've upgraded this account from freemium to a paid for account. You can see the label reminding me to upgrade has been removed. And then one of those features that I'll now have access to is if I continue, you can see here that the software is pointing things out to me. So it can do things like this. It can point out that I've added the residency page, but I've chosen not to claim the personal allowance. But it is also able to provide tax saving tips, and it can do that by suggesting additional expenses that you may have missed, or possibly allowances that you may be entitled to claim. And you'll usually see that in the banners at the top here as you try to progress through the return. Now, if I'm happy to go ahead and submit this, I'll just click dismiss to that reminder. I can click on report to generate my tax calculation. In here I can see that my liability is made up of income tax, £11,660, class 4 national insurance of £2,125, leaving me with a total liability of £13,785, but a payment on account of £6,892. Below that, it also gives me a breakdown of how much I need to pay and by what date. My second payment on account is then due by July, and that will be calculated as 50% of the current year's liability. If I'm happy with that, I can click continue, and then it's just a case of working through answering these questions, making sure you've got a UTR in here, answer any questions that are relevant to you, attach additional information if you need to for any reason, and then submit your tax return. That was a very basic walkthrough of how to get set up on the software and how to prepare a simple tax return. I hope you found that useful.